that little heap of stones. Morning's getting close, and that little heap of stones.
High-Flying Bird is directed by Steven Soderbergh. It stars André, Holland, Kyle MacLachlan, and Sonja, Sohn. High-Flying Bird is a sports movie where the sport is distinctly in the background, where the duels are verbal and the competition takes place in meeting rooms. It's about the business of sports, much like 2011's Moneyball, directed by Bennett Miller. But where Moneyball was about the science behind the business, High-Flying Bird is about the politics of sport. More specifically, the power struggle going on in the NBA between the league and the players, as viewed essentially through the eyes of rookie players, players that are in their first year on their first NBA contract, and specifically through the eyes of one of their agent, played by André Holland, who is the main character, and who's trying to look out for his client's best interest. Rookies are the ones in the NBA who are in the most precarious financial situation. The reason for that being they're not yet on superstar contracts and they don't have endorsements or sponsorships with major corporations. And yet the money that is made off their labor essentially is enormous. And while, yes, they make a decent living, it's pennies in comparison to the amount of wealth they are generating with their talent and their basketball prowess. In addition to that, this film puts us in the situation of a lockdown where the players aren't playing and thus aren't getting paid, which puts a little bit of a dramatic spin and more imperative on the situation to resolve itself. The script is very sharply written. There are numerous, very entertaining verbal jousts, and on top of that, all of the performances by the central characters, be that André Holland, Kyle MacLachlan, Zazie Beetz, who's wonderful, and Bill Duke, all of these actors are absolutely on the top of their game. On top of the plot, there are intercuts with documentary footage of NBA players that are talking about their rookie year and the struggles that went along with their NBA debut. This adds some added realism and some more context. And that really works because a lot of the dialogue is very technical jargon and business speak and revolves around contract disputes. These sequences help to humanize that situation and put a face on the people who are impacted by this world. Now, we all know that Steven Soderbergh loves a good heist film. Hell, he's probably made some of the best heist films of the 21st century, and so it shouldn't come as a surprise that, in essence, High-Flying Bird is actually a heist film. Now, it's not a heist film in the traditional sense because there isn't anything to be stolen, but if you've seen the film, you'll definitely understand what I'm talking about. And it is specifically in that department that I feel the film fails in its structure. It doesn't really set up the heist almost at all, and it's only in the end that it's revealed that everything was part of this master plan that was engineered by the main character. And it sort of sprung out of nowhere, which I thought was a huge problem. A large part of the joy of a heist film is in the setup, is in creating a plan, in finding your allies, in improvising when things go wrong. And because of the way this film is set up, you're sort of deprived as an audience member of that joy. It really is, in my opinion, the film's biggest downfall, and if you add to that the fact that the stakes don't feel so high, despite what I said earlier about the importance of this contract dispute, the film communicates a lot as to why the game's important and why the game matters, and talks about love of the game, but ultimately I don't think it really communicated why I, as an audience member, should care as to whether there's more basketball or not. Now, we do have to talk about the technical aspect of the film, which was shot on an iPhone. Now, I didn't know that going into the film, but within the first 5 seconds, it popped out at me, and I immediately said out loud, this was not shot on a proper cinema camera. And because Unsane was shot on an iPhone, I just put 2 and 2 together and said, well, this is probably shot on an iPhone, because that's what Soderbergh's into recently. And lo and behold, that was correct. It was effectively shot on an iPhone. Now, to be fair, in terms of blocking, camera angles, editing, camera movement, directing, the film is absolutely top-notch in all those departments, and I wouldn't expect anything less coming from Steven Soderbergh. However, and this is probably not the film's fault, but I don't think my brain is fully prepared to accept the iPhone image as a proper, I don't want to say it, but dare I say, cinematic image.
Cinematic. More cinematic. Cinematic
look.
Cinematic videos, kind of look cinematic, get that cinematic look. Cinematic video, cinematic movements, cinematic, more cinematic look.
More cinematic look.
Cinematic videos.
Now, another thing I forgot to mention is shooting in slow motion. Shooting in slow motion can make your video also look more cinematic.
And that probably stems from me and my own biases. Maybe I'm not used to it. Maybe it's just that I don't want to accept that you can shoot a film on such an inexpensive piece of equipment because it makes me feel better about not doing anything. But the focus is just way too deep. It looks like one of those medieval tapestries or the orthodox iconographic pictures where everything just appears to be on the same plane and is very flat. Now, using deep focus is of course a cinematic tool that's used in traditional cinematography. Stanley Kubrick was the absolute master of using deep focus photography, but the creaminess and the softness that you get from 35mm film or better, larger sensor cameras just makes the image far more pleasurable and just makes it look that much nicer, whereas with this, there's just so much digital sharpening going on. The contrast is off, the dynamic range is just weird, the highlights when they're blown out, they're just frankly very, very ugly, and to be quite frank, it was extremely distracting. Now, this isn't the first high-profile film to be shot on an iPhone, so what about Unsane? What about Tangerine? I haven't seen Unsane, but I will say that because of the subject matter, because it's a horror film, because it takes place in a psychiatric ward, and I'm imagining that there's this whole thing about, is she really crazy, or are these things really going on, that sort of warped aesthetic, that strange cinematography could, in my mind, work well with the iPhone imagery. Same thing goes for Tangerine, that presents this strange, trashy, vulgar world, and in my opinion really fits well with the look of the iPhone. But that smartphone look is so distinctive that if it doesn't serve the narrative, if it doesn't really serve a wider purpose than just wanting to shoot on an iPhone, for me it really doesn't work. But for this film, all it really brought to the table was very obnoxious motion artifacts from the stabilizer that they used. So as always, thanks very much for watching the video. Please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, and until next time, see ya.
Red.